I knew before I even opened the door. There's a particular kind of silence that a house makes when people inside it are waiting for you. Not the peaceful kind, not the kind you sink into after a long day. This was a held breath silence, the kind that means something is about to break open. I turned the key, pushed through, and there they were. Renee stood in the center of the living room with her arms crossed so tight across her chest, she looked like she was trying to hold herself together. Beside her, her son Travis was pacing, back and forth, like a man in a cage, his phone clenched, white-knuckled in his hand. Neither of them waited for me to close the door. "What did you do?" Renee's voice came out like a split wire, crackling with something between fury and fear. "I went to the ATM, Gary. I nearly collapsed right there in the parking lot." Travis shoved his phone toward my face, close enough that I had to lean back. "The account is empty. There's nothing in it. What did you do?" I set my work bag down on the hallway table, slowly, deliberately. My heartbeat was louder than I expected, but my voice came out steady. "I opened a new account," I said. "My paycheck goes there now." The room didn't explode. It went perfectly, horrifyingly still. Renee's face drained. Not gradually, but all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. Travis stopped mid-step. His mouth opened but produced nothing. For 4 full seconds, the only sound in the entire house was the old railroad clock I'd mounted in this hallway the year I moved in, the year I still lived here alone. Then everything came apart. "My name is Gary Mercer. I'm 54 years old, and I've spent 33 of those years as a union pipe fitter, crawling through mechanical rooms, working in trenches in the dead of January, sweating through summers in boiler rooms that could bake bread. I'm not a wealthy man. I'm a steady one. My paycheck arrives every 2 weeks with the reliability of a tide. It paid off this house. It put a new roof on this house. Every pipe under these floors, every circuit in these walls. I either ran it myself or I know the man who did. I married Renee 2.5 years ago. I was 52 then, 6 years, past a divorce that had gutted me in ways I still don't fully have words for. My kids were grown and scattered. The house had started to feel less like a home and more like a storage unit I slept in. Then I met Renee at a work banquet. She was warm, funny, attentive, in the specific way that makes a lonely man feel chosen. I believed in what I saw. Travis came with the arrangement. He was 26, perpetually between things, between jobs, between apartments, between the version of himself he was always about to become. Renee told me it was temporary. "Just until he stabilizes," she'd said, touching my arm. 6 months, maybe less. I believed that too. In the beginning, it felt good to have a full house again. Family helps family, that's how it's on. That's what I grew up watching. My father worked double shifts at the refinery so my mother wouldn't have to choose between groceries and the electric bill. Generosity was something I understood in my bones. The first time Travis asked to borrow money, it was $150 for new tires. "I'll get you back next Friday," he said. Friday came. Then 3 more Fridays. Then it was $200 for a phone bill, $350 for an apartment application fee for a place he never moved into. Each time, Renee would find me in the kitchen afterward and say, "He's trying, Gary. Don't make him feel worse than he already does." I didn't want to be the hard man, the obstacle. So I wasn't. Then came the conversation that changed the architecture of my life, though I didn't recognize it at the time. It was a Tuesday evening. I'd come home with my lower back knotted from a 12-hour shift, and I was sitting on the edge of the bed, working liniment into it when Renee appeared in the doorway. "I've been thinking," she said, leaning against the frame in that casual way she had. "It would just be easier if your direct deposit went into our joint account. I manage the bills anyway. It would simplify everything." I remember the feeling that passed through me. Not alarm exactly, more like a slight drop in the room's temperature. "I don't know," I said. "It's just logistics, Gary. We're married. It's how married people do it." I was tired. I was always tired. And the thought of another argument felt heavier than the compromise. So I went to the bank the following week and changed the deposit routing. That was the beginning of the end of something I didn't know I still had. From that point on, my paycheck became something that passed through me on its way to somewhere else. When I asked about our finances, Renee would say, "It's handled." When I noticed large withdrawals, she'd say, "Utilities went up." When Travis showed up with a new gaming setup or a jacket I'd never seen before, she'd say, "Clearance sale." When I pointed out the credit card balance climbing month after month, she'd remind me, with a patience that felt practiced, that I lived here too, and that a home cost money to run. Her home, she sometimes said, not our home, hers. The first time I heard Travis call it our place, something cold moved through me. This house had my name on the mortgage. Only my name. I had bought it a decade before I met Renee. I'd retiled the bathroom. I'd built the deck off the back. I'd installed every ceiling fan in every room. But somewhere in the slow erosion of those 2.5 years, I'd been eased toward the margins of a life I had built. I cooked on the nights Renee worked late. I drove Travis to job interviews that dissolved into nothing. I stayed quiet when the cable bill jumped to include every sports package ever invented. I stayed quiet about a lot of things. Last month, the silence cracked. I stopped at the pharmacy after a double shift to pick up the prescription I take for my back. Nothing dramatic, just something to help me actually sleep. My card was declined at the register. The pharmacist had the good grace to look away while I processed that. "Probably a glitch," Renee said later dismissively when I brought it up. "I'll sort it." But I'd seen the bank notification slide across Travis's phone screen that same evening while he was watching television. A cash withdrawal at 2:09 in the morning. Something shifted in me. Not dramatically, not with fire. Just shifted. The way old metal shifts when the pressure on it has been building for years. I went to the bank the next morning. I asked for 20 months of statements and sat in a hard plastic chair under fluorescent light and read every line. The woman who helped me, her name tag said, Constance, didn't look surprised when I asked. She just pulled up the records and set them in front of me. What I found there made the blood pound behind my eyes. Cash withdrawals at odd hours, sports bar tabs, online betting platforms, multiple ones, an electronics purchase I'd never seen come through the door, a vacation rental in Gulf Shores, a long weekend I hadn't been invited to or even informed about, jewelry, restaurant charges from places I'd never been, $42,300. I sat in that chair for a long time. When I finally looked up, Constance asked if I'd like to open a new account, a personal one, my name only. Yes, I said, I would. Now I stood in my own living room watching the fallout settle. You're going to destroy everything, Travis said, his voice finding its edge again. You can't just pull the rug out from under us. We have obligations. Your obligations, I said. We're a family, Renee said. And there was a deliberateness in the way she said the word, like she was placing it on the table between us as a trump card. Family, I said, doesn't mean someone funds whatever he wants while I work 60-hour weeks and can't fill a prescription. Renee flinched like she'd been flicked. Not because my voice was hard, it wasn't. Because it was level. She'd been expecting something she could push back against. What she got was a wall. I walked past them into the kitchen because my mouth had gone dry. They followed me, of course. They always followed. You blindsided us, Renee said. If you were unhappy, you should have said something. I ran water into a glass and turned around. I did say something. Every time I asked about the credit cards, every time I asked about the savings, every time I asked about cash coming out of our account at 2 a.m. Travis's jaw tightened. You were monitoring me? It was my account, I said simply. Renee's face changed slightly at the word my. For 2 years, that word had quietly been replaced in this house. Our account, our expenses, our decisions. But the reality had always been simpler, and we'd all known it. This isn't how you handle problems in a marriage, Renee said. I've been handling this problem for 2 years, I said. Quietly, while you spent it. The word spent hung in the air between us. Travis shot his hand out toward the door. If you don't like how things have been run, then fine, say so. But you don't just blow everything up overnight. I didn't blow anything up, I said. I changed where my direct deposit goes. The rest of this, I gestured at the space between us. This was already burning. Travis grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. This isn't over, he said, and walked out. The front door shook in its frame. Renee stayed. She looked at me across the kitchen counter with something I was only beginning to recognize. Not hurt, not even anger. Something more calculated than either. You're going to regret this, she said softly. I set my glass down. I've been regretting the last 2 years. I'm done regretting things I didn't do. I walked out to the garage and shut the door behind me. In the dark, and the smell of sawdust and machine oil, my hands finally began to shake. Not from fear, from release. The kind that comes when you've been holding something clenched for so long that opening your fist hurts. Behind the door, I could hear their muffled voices rising and falling. I didn't go back in. I found a scrapboard on my workbench and started sanding it down. Slow, steady strokes. For the first time in longer than I could clearly remember, I felt like I was in charge of something. Travis didn't come home until nearly 1 a.m. I was still up. Not waiting exactly, but not sleeping. The lamp by the recliner threw a low yellow circle. When the door creaked open and Travis saw me sitting there, he slowed. What? You're going to interrogate me now? No, I said, I'm waiting for the truth. He stood near the door like he was keeping his exit available. Renee appeared at the top of the stairs, a shadow listening. I reached beside the chair and lifted a folder, the one I'd brought home from the bank, already soft at the edges from handling. I set it on the coffee table. Travis looked at it the way you look at something you know is going to change things. What is that? 20 months of statements. He swallowed. Renee came downstairs slowly. Her expression was controlled, but her hands were not. You went through our finances, she said. No, I said, mine. I opened the folder and slid the top pages toward Travis. Take a look. He didn't move. just stared at the numbers from a safe distance, as if proximity would amount to admission. I don't have to account for every transaction, he said finally. You do, I said, when they come out of my paycheck. Renee picked up the pages. I watched her eyes move down the columns. Cash withdrawal, $340. Online betting platform, $700. Beach rental, $2,400. Sports bar tab, $280. Electronics, over $1,000. You're framing this to look worse than it is, she said quietly. I'm reading it as it is, I said. Travis grabbed the pages from her. That betting money, I was trying to build it up, flip it, make something back. With whose money? I asked. He didn't answer. There's a number at the bottom of that page, I said. $42,300. That's not a rough patch. That's a decision that was made over and over again. Renee sat on the edge of the couch. We meant to fix it, she said. Every month we thought we were close to catching up. Catching up to what? Travis started pacing, but the energy was different now. The anger had thinned. Underneath it was something rawer. Fear. There were losses, he said, but if one bet had come through, one good one, we could have wiped it all out. I looked at him for a long moment. You gambled my paycheck. It was exactly like that. Renee turned to him sharply. I told you this was going to blow up. Oh, now it's my fault? I told you he'd eventually look at the numbers. You said he wouldn't notice. That last sentence fell into the room like a stone into still water. They both heard it a half second after it came out. My chest tightened, but not with shame, with clarity. So you knew, I said. That's not what I... You knew, Renee. The room was very quiet. It wasn't personal, Travis muttered. I almost laughed. I've given 33 years of my body to this work. I've come home with torn-up knees and chalk-white hands and a back that keeps me up at night. Every dollar in that account came from that. And you're telling me it wasn't personal? Renee stood up slowly. What do you want us to say? The truth, I said, just once. A pause, then Travis quietly. Fine, we needed money. I screwed up. I thought I could fix it before you found out. You didn't fix it, I said. You doubled it. He looked at the floor. I turned to Renee. And you? She met my eyes. I watched it happen, she said. The admission cost her something. I could see that. I told myself I was protecting you from the stress. You've had health issues, I thought. My health issues, I said, are because I've been carrying everyone else. That landed. Renee looked away. Travis broke the silence first. So what now? You cut off the money and we just... What? The bleeding stops, I said. That's what happens now. And the debt? Yours. He stared at me like I'd just told him the sky was falling. You're going to let us drown? I'm not pushing you into the water, I said. I'm stepping out of it. Renee folded her arms. You're acting like we robbed you. You did. The words sat in the middle of the room. Nobody moved. Be careful, Travis said, his voice hardening. Why? I asked. Because it's accurate? He stepped toward me. Renee caught his arm. Stop, she said sharply. We stood there, the three of us, in a standoff that had been building for 2 years. I let it breathe. Then I picked up the folder. Monday is the last day my check comes into this house, I said, and you have 30 days to decide what you're going to do about it. 30 days for what? Renee asked. To decide if you want to stay here? Travis's face went slack. This is our home. No, I said quietly, it's mine. The 30 days felt like a season compressed into a month. The first week, nobody shouted. Nobody slammed things. Instead, the house went cold. Polite, deliberate, rehearsed. Renee stopped making dinner. Travis stopped speaking to me entirely. I labeled a shelf in the refrigerator with masking tape, Gary, and it felt equal parts absurd and necessary. 3 days in, Travis found me unloading a bag of concrete from the truck bed. "Look," he said, voice softer than usual. "Maybe things got out of hand, but I've been putting in applications. Real ones this time." "Good," I said, lifting the bag. "That's it? Good? What would you like, a parade?" His jaw tightened. "Renee says you're scared of being alone." I set the concrete down and looked at him. Scared of what? Losing us. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I didn't lose anyone. I stopped paying for the privilege of being taken advantage of. He had nothing for that. He went back inside. The second week brought the subtler strategy. Guilt. Renee knocked on my bedroom door one night. She stood in the doorway without makeup, looking smaller than usual, and said she'd been thinking. Maybe she'd relied on me too much. Maybe she'd let things spiral in a way she hadn't meant to. Maybe. She sat on the edge of the bed and reached for my hand. "We're married, Gary. This was never supposed to be a transaction." "It isn't," I said. "But it's not supposed to be one-sided either." I didn't see how bad it got. "You saw the numbers." She looked down. "What if we just compromised? You keep control of your paycheck, but you help with the credit cards, just until we're above water." There it was. Not remorse. A counteroffer. "No," I said. Her expression shifted, hurt, sliding into frustration. "You're punishing us." "I'm stopping," I said. "There's a difference." She left without another word. Week 3 brought anger. The honest kind that doesn't bother dressing itself up. Travis came home one evening, jacket flung, jaw set. "One of my cards got declined." "You do that?" "I didn't apply for it," I said. "You called them." "Consequences don't need my help to arrive, Travis." He stepped closer. "You think you're the hero of this story." "I think I'm tired," I said. "You're going to end up alone." That one landed, not because it frightened me, but because I understood suddenly what I'd been living. I'd been alone in a house full of people. I'd eaten dinner at a table where no one asked how my day went. I'd paid for vacations I wasn't invited on and slept behind a door I unconsciously kept locked. "I've been alone for 2 years," I said quietly. At least now the silence will be honest. He didn't have an answer for that either. By week 4, the house had changed. Not hostile anymore, resigned. Boxes appeared in Travis's room. The oversized television disappeared one afternoon. I found out later he'd sold it. Renee came home later each evening, avoiding rooms, avoiding reality. On the 28th day, I found her at the kitchen table, staring at a notepad full of numbers. "We can't afford this house," she said. Not as an accusation, just as fact. "You couldn't," I said. "Not at this rate." She didn't argue. "I found a place, 2 bedrooms, small." "Realistic," I said. Her eyes filled, but it was different this time. There was no strategy behind it. "You're really not going to change your mind?" "No." She nodded once, slowly, like she was setting something down that had been heavy for a long time. On the 30th day, Travis loaded his car. He didn't look at me. Renee stood in the doorway longer than necessary, her hand on the frame. "This didn't have to end this way," she said. "It didn't have to start the other way either," I replied. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "I hope you find some peace." "I already have," I said. She walked to the car. I stood in the driveway and watched them pull away. No drama, no last words, just the sound of tires on asphalt fading into a neighborhood that had been mine long before they arrived. Then silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't press on you. The kind that simply is. The house felt strange that first night. Not lonely, just unfamiliar. The way a room feels when you move the furniture back to where it started and realize the shape of the space had always been fine. No sports commentary bleeding through the walls. No footsteps at midnight. No whispered arguments behind doors. Just the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking. I slept without locking my bedroom door. When I woke up the next morning and realized I'd done that, I sat on the edge of the bed for a while. I hadn't known I was doing it. That scared me in its own quiet way. How much I'd been adjusting without noticing. I made coffee and took it to the front porch. The oak tree in the yard was moving in an early breeze. The roses along the fence were overgrown and needed tending. The driveway had a crack I'd been stepping over for 2 years, because there had always been something more urgent to manage. I spent that Saturday cleaning, not from obligation, but from want. I moved furniture, pulled down the massive wall mount where the television had lived, and patched the drywall behind it. Opened windows. The house breathed differently with the windows open. The following Sunday, I drove to the hardware store and bought new light fixtures for the kitchen. The old ones had been flickering for months. Every time I mentioned it, the response had been that it wasn't urgent. Funny how urgency gets redefined when you control your own resources. I didn't hear from either of them for 8 days. Then my phone buzzed. Renee. I let it ring twice before I answered. Hi. Her voice was smaller. We got moved in. Good. It's tight. A pause. Kyle's voice murmured somewhere in the background. I've been thinking about things. About how badly we handled all of it. I appreciate that. Silence then. We're short on the deposit, about $2,000. I closed my eyes. You said you weren't calling about money. I'm not asking for... She stopped. I'm asking for help. That's the same thing. Her breathing changed. I thought after everything you might... Renee. My voice was calm. I'm not your credit line. I never should have been. A long silence then, barely above a whisper. I didn't think you'd actually follow through. I know, I said. She hung up. I sat on the porch after the call, watching the last of the afternoon light settle into the yard. There's a particular grief that comes with choosing yourself. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It looks like an empty afternoon, like space where noise used to be. But it also feels like being able to breathe all the way down. A few days later, a text from an unknown number. Travis. I get it now, he wrote. I thought I could fix the money before you noticed. I was wrong. I sat with that for a moment. Then the second message arrived. Any chance you'd co-sign a loan? Just to get started. I put the phone down. Then I blocked the number. Not out of spite. Out of understanding. Some lessons can only be learned by living them. Co-signing wouldn't teach him anything. It would only interrupt the process. The following Saturday morning, I loaded my fishing rods into the truck for the first time in years and drove out to Harmon Lake. The water was gray-green and still. The air smelled like pine and cold mud and something I couldn't name but recognized. I cast the line and sat back in my folding chair. No one needed anything from me out here. No one was watching my balance. No one had calculated what I was worth before I'd finished earning it. For the first time in 2.5 years, I wasn't subsidizing someone else's life. I was just sitting in mine, feeling the slow, patient pull of a current that didn't care about any of it. Somewhere between the still water and the sound of the wind through the pines, I understood something that had taken too long to arrive. Freedom doesn't feel loud. It doesn't announce itself the way pain does. It just feels steady. And steady, finally, genuinely, was what I had become. 6 months passed before Renee knocked on my door. By then, the house had been reclaimed entirely. I'd repainted the living room a warm, quiet green. New curtains. The garden was trimmed. The roses blooming again the way they used to, when I actually had time to tend them. I'd joined a Friday morning coffee group at the supply house and started fishing every other weekend. I'd fixed the crack in the driveway. I'd rehung the hall light that had been loose in its bracket for a year. It's remarkable what you notice when your life isn't organized around someone else's crisis. I was sanding a bookshelf in the garage when I heard the knock. I knew before I went to the door. There's a way people knock when they believe they still have a claim to a place. Renee stood on the porch, looking thinner than I remembered. No designer bag, no careful makeup. Just jeans, a worn cardigan, and eyes that carried the particular exhaustion of someone who has been living with the consequences of their choices. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She asked to come in. I stepped aside. She moved through the living room slowly, taking in what had changed. "It's different," she murmured. "I needed it to be." We sat across from each other on the same couch where so many arguments had unraveled. She looked around once more, then at me. "Travis left," she said. 2 months ago? The debt was worse than I'd told you. Loans I didn't know about. He'd been borrowing from places that charged the kind of interest that compounds daily. She folded her hands in her lap. "He did to me what we did to you." I didn't say anything. I'd suspected something like that might happen. "I'm working 2 jobs," she continued. "I'm paying it down, slowly." She looked up. "I'm not here for money, Gary. I want you to know that." "Okay." "I'm here because I owe you something." She took a careful breath. "I knew the numbers were wrong. I knew Travis was spending money you hadn't agreed to spend. I watched it happen and I chose not to stop it because I was scared. Scared that if I held him accountable, he'd leave. Scared that if I told you the truth, you'd leave." Her voice was quieter now. "So I kept the system running and told myself it was fine because we were married and you were strong and you could handle it." She looked at me directly. "I never asked if you should have to." The clock on the wall ticked softly. "I can't give you back what I took," she said. "I know that. But I needed you to understand that I see it now. What I did. What I allowed. Apologies are complicated things. They don't undo. They don't reimburse. They simply acknowledge. And acknowledgement, I've learned, is not nothing. Sometimes it's the only form of honesty that's still available." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. She nodded. "I don't expect forgiveness today. I just didn't want the last thing between us to be that fight in the kitchen." We talked for nearly an hour after that. Not about money, not about fault, about rebuilding, the particular unglamorous work of it. Her small apartment, her 2 jobs, what it felt like to be 53 and starting from nothing. When she stood to leave, she paused at the door. "You look lighter," she said. "I am." She smiled, something small and genuine. "I hope you find someone who actually sees you." I didn't respond to that because what I'd spent 2.5 years looking for wasn't someone who saw me. It was the ability to see myself clearly again. After she left, I stood at the window and watched her walk down the driveway. No bitterness, no longing, just understanding. Some relationships aren't designed to survive the truth, but the people inside them can grow from it if they're willing. That evening, I sat on the back porch with my coffee and watched the sky move from orange to deep violet over the tree line. I thought about the man I'd been 2.5 years ago, the one who changed his direct deposit rather than change a conversation, the one who swallowed his concerns in the name of keeping the peace, the one who believed that sacrifice was the same as love and that silence was the same as harmony. That man would have co-signed the loan. He would have handed over the money for the security deposit. He would have told himself he was being generous while slowly understanding he was being emptied. That man isn't sitting here anymore. This one learned something harder, that self-respect is not selfishness, that love without limits becomes something else entirely, that saying no is not a cruelty. Sometimes it's the most honest thing you can offer. If you're listening to this and something in it reached you, if you've ever felt guilty for protecting what you spent your whole life building, hear this. Boundaries are not betrayal. Accountability is not cruelty, and choosing yourself is not the same as abandoning anyone. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know whether Renee and I will ever find our way back to something, a friendship, a mutual understanding. Two people who shared a hard lesson and came out the other side with some grace. But I know this. Today I live in my house. Today I earn my own money. Today I don't apologize for either of those things. And if this story hits something in you, if you've ever had to draw a line you were afraid to draw, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me where you are right now. Tell me what line you had to hold or the one you're still working up the nerve to hold. We share stories like this because sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that finally set us free. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this reached someone you know, someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. Let's keep being honest together. See you next time.